Some organizations that say they are against xenophobia have met today for a plan of action which they intend to draft to counter Operation Dudula. They intend to tackle claims that migrants are taking jobs from South Africans and raids which are intended to drive them out of work. Operation Dudula has been active on the streets of Johannesburg for weeks now, including places such as Hillbrow and Bree Taxi Rank, targeting migrants in an attempt to get them deported. For more on this, we're joined tonight by the National Spokesperson of the United Front, Trevor Ngwane. Mr. Ngwane, a very good evening to you. Welcome to the program. Why do you feel it's necessary for you to have held this meeting today and to counter Operation Dudula?
Thank you very much, Thembekile, for having me. Well, the problem is that, xenophobia is not something unique to South Africa or Africa. It is happening throughout the world as the people face economic difficulties. Remember, President Trump in the USA started to victimize Muslims. President Bolsonaro in Brazil with his xenophobic ideas and policies. And in Africa, we all know that xenophobia is a legacy of colonialism. Remember, white racism actually is responsible for tribalism and for the idea that, certain groups must fight other groups. So it's not a good thing. We have to unite as human beings and speak with one voice. That is why we're challenging xenophobia.
Well, the people who are involved with Operation Dudula say they're not xenophobic. What they're doing is they are forcing government and this country to put South Africans first when it comes to economic opportunity.
Yeah, but the problem with our government, it's not that it's putting, migrants from Africa first and the black working class second. The problem with this government is that it is putting white monopoly capital, big business, and the aspirant black bourgeoisie first. So it is putting profits first. So what we should do is to unite with the migrants, with the poor, with the working class, and demand that there should be a redistribution of wealth which favors the majority, which favors the working class and the poor.
And we'll talk about the leadership failure from government as far as this is concerned in a moment. But on the issue of xenophobia, because that's the word you used, do you regard Operation Dudula as a xenophobic campaign?
Yeah, I do. There are certain people maybe who, might be swayed by the arguments of Dudula, because as you pointed out, Dudula will cover its xenophobia, talking about jobs, to talk about crime. We must clean up, the inner city. But ultimately, those cleanups that fight for jobs targets vulnerable African migrants from Mozambique, from Malawi. So because it targets those groups of people, it is xenophobic. But we do understand that some people are so desperate for jobs, are so desperate that they might get swayed by these arguments.
And if this is indeed a crisis of government's doing, in the sense that government has failed the predominantly poor black majority in this country, do you trust that the same government can come up with a solution to address that? I mean, recently there's been an announcement from government to say that these are the priority categories of work where locals should be prioritized. Is that enough of a step, and do you trust them to holistically address the problem?
Well, at least they are responding or saying something about the xenophobia, about the attacks, about the violence. Because what is frustrating is when government keeps quiet. What is frustrating is when the police stand aside as poor people trading in the street, hawkers, get attacked. So the government, if it's acknowledging the problem, we're happy about that. But we cannot expect much from this government because it is a capitalist government. It is a pro-big business government. And remember, the interest of big business, of the exploiter, is to keep us divided and separated. So the government will maybe, speak left but walk right, because it serves the interests of, those who exploit us, who oppress us, who are making profits from our labor, from our sweat, to keep us divided.
And you mentioned hawkers being targeted. Say, for example, all foreign hawkers in this country are taken off the streets and even deported if it gets to that extreme. The reality is, with the availability of resources and assistance for the poor in the country being what it is, that doesn't mean that tomorrow, Sunday, a South African hawker will be sitting on that street corner selling fruit or any other product, does it?
Yeah, that is the problem. So this is a zero-sum game. And in a way, it's a form of scapegoating. When the government, which is dancing to the music of the big bosses, of the exploiter, of white monopoly capital, of the aspirant black bourgeoisie, that government is happy that we fight on the ground over peanuts, over, a stand, a table, at a corner, at Para, taxi rank. So you are right, Thembekile. If you chase that street trader away and they go back to Malawi, it won't significantly change the lives of South African black, poor, working class people.
To your meeting then today, what is it that you see as your role going forward? Because ultimately, the reality is in South Africa that yes, you do have pockets of South African society that are xenophobic, but at the same time, you do have poor black South Africans who live in these township areas in the Johannesburg CBD and the likes, who've not been able to get work, for example, in places such as restaurants, because let's be honest, restaurants hire foreign labor because then they can exploit them and pay them below the national minimum wage, for example.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea if the trade unions, would organize in those sectors which exploit immigrants because, of their kind of weaker bargaining position. Of course, they employ those they can exploit. Sometimes they will use the fact that you come from Mozambique or Malawi. Sometimes they will use the fact that you come from, KwaZulu or Cape Town. You are an inland migrant. Sometimes they will use the fact that you are a woman, to exploit you. So the unions must try and organize everyone so that, everyone gets a living wage. The other thing is that, we must also put pressure on the police to stop the violence. I mean, we cannot have people being attacked in broad daylight with impunity. Also, I think we should explore charging some of the, Dudula leaders with hate speech, because really to target certain racial groups or ethnic groups and call them names, criminals, whatever, I think that constitutes hate speech. So we might have to take legal steps against such language.
Would that not inflame the situation, though, I wonder?
Excuse me?
Don't you think that would inflame the situation at this point?
Yeah, well, as you can hear from my tone, I'm really trying to, point out and reach out for those maybe who are confused about what is going on. What is going on is xenophobic violence. And there are people who agitate and actually are making it worse. So we have to stop them. We have to stop their violence, and we have to stop, their inflammatory language. And we have to stop their demeaning and dehumanizing other human beings. So this is quite important. I don't see how they could be, making matters worse.
Trevor Ngwane, spokesperson for the United Front. Good to have your time tonight, so thank you very much.